Hi friends, it's Ashley and welcome back to the channel. So today's video is another reading vlog and we're going to be reading fantasy romance, but there's a twist. And that is that all the books I'm going to be reading in this video are ones that I think are going to be 5 stars. And so I'm really excited to read these. So I'm going to be reading 3 books in today's video, and they are Warrior Princess Assassin by Brigid Kemmerer, Soulgazer by Maggie Rapier, and Violet Thistlewaite is Not a Villain Anymore by Emily Krumholtz. And the one I'm going to start with first is Warrior Princess Assassin. I am really excited for this, and I think it's going to be a 5-star because it's by Brigid Kemmerer, who, this is her adult debut, but she writes YA fantasy, and I've read her YA fantasies, and I have them here on this bookshelf. So first, we have A Curse So Dark and Lonely. And this is a trilogy, and I've read the whole trilogy, and I really enjoyed it. One of her other series is Defy the Night, which is kind of like a Robin Hood retelling, and I loved this first book. Really enjoyed the second one. And then the third one I haven't read yet, but I'm pretty sure I'm really going to enjoy that one as well. And then she also wrote Forging Silver into Stars, which I absolutely loved this book. It follows a minor character from her first trilogy, The Curse So Dark and Lonely book, and also 2 new characters, and I ate this one up. I still need to read the sequel for this one that came out this past year. And so since I really enjoyed those books, I feel like I'm going to love this one, and I don't know much about this except that this book is from 3 different perspectives, and there's a warrior, a princess, and an assassin character. And I believe that the assassin is like a childhood friend of the princess and loves her, but then she has to go off and marry this king who's a warrior. And so yeah, without further ado, I'm just gonna go hop right into this, and after I read some, I'll come back and tell you more about what it's about and my first thoughts. So I just read the first 2 chapters, and they are from our princess's point of view, Jory, and the yearning that was in here, because we also get to meet the assassin, who is Asher, and him and her, they like grew up together because her mother was the queen, and then his mother was one of the queen's ladies in waiting, and so they grew up together. But then when they were 15, there was an incident where Jory's mother, the queen, was killed. Asher's mother survived the attack, the incident, but she was found as like being guilty, as being involved in the death of the queen. Although Jory doesn't think that was the case. She thinks that she was wrongly accused, but anyways, she was killed because of that, put to death. Asher, since he was her son, was exiled from the kingdom and like sold off as an indentured servant. But even despite that, he still like found a way to visit Jory in the palace over the years, and he became an assassin. And we learned that in the first 2 chapters, Jory and Asher, they both have feelings for each other, but they can't be together. And so the bittersweet feelings, the yearning is so strong in chapter 2, and I loved it. And now he visits her the night before she is about to be given over to this other kingdom, to the warrior king, our other main character, to marry him, because Jory's kingdom is ceasing to being conquered by another kingdom. And so her brother, who is the oldest prince and the heir, and her father helped orchestrate this arranged marriage between her and this king of another nation. And this other king, he's known as being feared and a tyrant, and apparently has very strong like fire magic. And so there's always these stories of him like setting on fire and burning to ash anyone that disagrees with him. And so she is really not happy about this arrangement, and she's planning to refuse him. But then she learns that she is her last kingdom's hope of survival because her father's magic is currently the only thing that is keeping this other nation from invading their nation. But Jory doesn't have magic, and her brother also did not inherit magic, and so if her father dies, the kingdom will fall. But now with this arranged marriage, if she marries this warrior king, then he will be able to help protect their kingdom when her father passes away. And so that's the gist of the story so far. And I'm just about to go to chapter 3, and chapter 3 says the warrior. And so now I'm going to meet the warrior king, which I'm very interested in learning more about him because all we know so far about him is what we've heard from other people. But now we get to be inside his head. So I have made it to chapter 24, page 259. So I have about 140 pages left in this book. And dare I say, this has already been giving me that 5-star feeling. And I've just been devouring this. I've been flying through this book. I don't want to put it down. It's very bingeable, very fast-paced. There's never a dull moment in this book. And is very character-focused, and I'm loving that. And I'm loving all 3 of our main characters. So our first main character is Jory, who is our princess. And as a princess, she's lived a very sheltered life. And she really hasn't seen much of the world outside the castle. And she's headstrong, but also practical. So she doesn't let her stubbornness lead her to stupid decisions, which I really appreciate because one of my biggest pet peeves is when characters are so stubborn that they just make stupid decisions. I hate that. And unfortunately, I find that does happen a lot in female main characters that are trying to be written as being strong. I also really like how she's very mentally strong. She's very smart. She uses her wits to figure things out, yet she's not physically strong. So she knows how to throw a punch, but she's not a master of combat or using swords or anything. And I find that really refreshing because I feel a lot of times now these days, female characters in adult fantasy romance books, they are experts right from the very beginning at combat or swords or something, and those characters can be a lot of fun to read about, but I think it's nice every once in a while to get a character that doesn't quite have those skills. And also gives a good opportunity for character growth and a character arc where she could learn how to use a sword, and that would be so much fun. It could lead to really epic fight scenes. And so overall, Jory feels very well balanced as a character, and I really appreciate that. And then our second main character is Asher, and he is Jory's childhood friend turned assassin. And so he has been through some very horrible stuff in his life. And so as such, he's very much of the tortured soul type of character. He's very angsty, and it's clear that he has feelings for Jory and that he cares very much about her, but also he realizes that they're both from very different worlds, so it just wouldn't work out. Their positions are too different, and so he doesn't really act on those feelings. And yet, he cares for her so much that he'll do anything, to protect her. He'll burn down the world for her. And his character feels very much like Night personified. And in contrast, our third and final main character, King Kai, is like the sun. First off, he has fire magic. And also we learned from Jory in the beginning that he has a reputation of being, cruel and ruthless. Which, when she meets him, this is proving not to be 100% the case because he's actually very kind to her. And he's one of the first males in her life to treat her as an equal. Because before this, she's only really dealt with her father, the king, and her brother, who always seemed to look down upon her. And so he treats her as an equal and treats her with respect. But at the same time, you also see that those rumors about him being ruthless and cruel aren't completely false because he does know how to get things done, and he will be ruthless when he has to be to protect his people and his homeland. And then another element of the story that I'm really enjoying is the romance. So technically nothing has really happened yet in the romance department, but there has been lots of yearning and lots of angst, which I'm really loving. And so I know I heard before reading this that the romance might be a why choose, so they might all end up together, Jory, Kai, and Asher might all end up together, and it does kind of seem like that's going to be the case because from the beginning you can clearly see that Asher and Jory have feelings for each other, but then when they meet Kai, have also started to develop feelings for him a little bit as well so far. And then in turn, he also seems romantically interested in both of them. So it'll be really interesting to see how that plays out. And then one other fascinating thing about this book is the magic system. So you learn that Jory's father has weather magic, so he can control the weather. And usually this magic is passed down from parent to child. But her brother never got it, and so everyone thought she was going to have the magic, but she also didn't inherit the magic. And so that's why they are making a pact with King Kai, because they're going to need protection from him. And then speaking of Kai, he has fire magic, but the way his fire magic works is he can't create fire, he can only manipulate it. So he'll draw symbols in the air, and if there's any fire nearby, then that fire will come to him and he can manipulate it. And so I think that those two types of magic are both very intriguing, and so I'm hoping we get to see more of them and maybe more different types of magic too. And then even though this is very character focused, there is also kind of like a mystery plot going on in here as well, with trying to figure out who is trying to kill King Kai and Jury, because the Assassin's Guild, where Asher is employed, ends up receiving separate orders for the assassinations of Rory and Kai. And it seems like that someone from Rory's kingdom is trying to kill Kai, and someone from his kingdom wants her dead. And that's kind of like the whole thing that sets off like the plot of this book and gets all our characters together. And so those are all my thoughts right now. I am going to go finish this now, and then I'll be back with my final thoughts. I love this. So the chapter I'm reading now is like a perfect example of how I was saying earlier, how Jory, like maybe she's not physically strong, but she is mentally strong, and she uses her wits to figure things out, and she just like solved a situation right now that the king and his men could not solve. And it's definitely having a better outcome than if they had solved it with force. Oh no. And that is how it ends. Oh. There is Barnes & Noble's exclusive content. It looks like it's going to be something from Asher's point of view. Oh, we're also getting the princess's perspective too. So yeah, this one is definitely getting 5 stars. I was right about this prediction. 5 stars all the way. And it is the first book in a trilogy, so it ends on a little bit of a cliffhanger. And in the last 140 pages, there was romantic developments that made me giddy, and there is a steamy scene near the end of this as well. And I will say that the thing I loved most about this was definitely the characters, our 3 main characters. I loved all 3 of them, and I loved reading from all their perspectives equally. Like, they're all very interesting and fascinating characters. And that being said, like, I also enjoyed the glimpses we got into the magic system of their world, and also like the little mystery we have going on where we're trying to figure out who actually hired assassins to try to kill Kai and Jory. So that is Warrior Princess Assassin. 100% recommend this one if you're a fan of fantasy romance, or if you enjoyed any of this Arthur's YA fantasy books. I feel like you would love this one. So next, I am going to pick up Violet Thistlewaite is a Villain No Longer. And this one falls more into like the cozy fantasy romance genre. So I feel like this will be a good one to read after like this one, because this one was very much not a cozy fantasy. And there was definitely exciting high-stake things going on in the plot in this one. And so this one is about Violet, who was a witch who worked for a dark sorcerer, but that dark sorcerer has died. And so now she's decided to move to a small town and just get like a new start and just live a quiet life in that town, where she plans to open a flower shop. And apparently in this town that she moves to, there's also an handsome yet prickly alchemist who lives there named Nathaniel. Also, can we just talk about how gorgeous this cover is as well? It's just so pretty. Hi, so it's been almost a week since my last update, but I finished Violet Thistlewaite is Not a Villain Anymore this morning, and I did not give any updates while reading this because actually right after my last update, I ended up getting sick and I'm finally like feeling mostly better by now. I'm just like slightly congested still, which you might be able to tell by my voice. But I ended up loving this. This is a 5-star read. And so far I've been 2 for 2 in my predictions, which makes me really excited, but also kind of nervous for the next book because I'm like, oh my gosh, will I continue being right? I loved everything about this book. The characters, the romance, the cozy fancy vibes, the writing, the story, and the magic. And overall, this was just really cute and cozy, and it had all the things that I love in a cozy fancy romance. There were cute animal companions, in particular a rock goblin cat and a cute little puppy named Daisy. And there was baked goods and tea, and just the inclusion of those two things in books just makes it that much cozier. And there was also a charming small town with unique residents such as a grumpy gnome and a happy-go-lucky beekeeper. And there's also a sentient plant in here that likes to steal knives and other sharp objects and just wave them around. And his character was so much fun. And overall, I feel like the cozy fancy vibes of this remind me a little bit of The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst, and also of Sangu Mandana's cozy fantasy books, so A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping and The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. Especially like the writing in here reminded me very much of the writing here. Like this writing is so beautiful and just very warm feeling, and there are so many quotable moments in this book. And you can tell that care is put into like every sentence in this book. And I really liked a lot of the times when we were in Violet's chapter perspectives, the writing evoked plant imagery in the way that it was used, and that seems very on par for Violet because she has plant magic and she is a gardener. And even though this book was very cozy and cute, it does still have some very serious moments and does deal with some serious topics as well that definitely add complexity to the story and the characters and just make it that much more fascinating and interesting to read. And for example, our main female character Violet and the love interest Nathaniel, both dealing with heavy inner trauma from their past that they have to work through throughout the book. And that trauma also like impacts how they interact with each other and the people around them. And so the two of them, Violet and Nathaniel, do go through character growth throughout the book. And by the end of the book, their character growth is just like so heartwarming. And a lot of that character growth does come by the two of them interacting and through their romance that ends up developing. And at first, they definitely start off on the wrong foot and they don't get along very well in the beginning. And a lot of this is due to the fact that Nathaniel is grumpy and he's not good at letting others in. And to make matters even worse, he ends up having to share his greenhouse with Violet because him and his sister had decided to lease half of their house because they needed the money because they're falling on hard times. But she included in the post that the apartment would also include a greenhouse. And that's one of the reasons that Violet accepted it, because she wants to open her flower shop in this town. But Nathaniel doesn't learn about this until after the fact when he finds Violet in the greenhouse. And so their first interaction does not go very well. But as the book progresses and they get to know each other, they actually end up developing a really super cute and sweet romance. And you actually learn that Nathaniel, beneath his grumpiness, is actually very sweet and very protective of those that he cares for and loves, and will burn down the world for them. And some other cute parts of their romance is there is parts in here where they're writing each other notes back and forth. And also they have chalk signs for their businesses, and they end up like going back and forth in their chalk signs, being like snarky to each other. Let me find a sample, because in this book, like every so often there is a drawing of the chalk signs with the messages on them, and that was just like so fun. Okay, so here's a sample where Violet on her shop shop is called Rough Around the Hedges. She writes, "No better medicine for a bad day than a beautiful bouquet." And then on Nathaniel's sign, on his apothecary sign, he writes, "No better medicine than actual medicines." So here they are. And then in addition to the romance, there is also an actual plot going on in here as well, in which there's this mysterious blight that is killing the plant life in the town. And so Violet and Nathaniel end up having to work together to try to figure out what is going on. And overall, I feel like this is a beautiful, cozy fantasy story of two people falling in love, while in the process helping each other heal from past scars. In that same vein, this book very much has like a hopeful overall message, which is that it's never too late to change, that you can always start anew in life. So those are my thoughts on this book. I definitely recommend it, especially if you're a fan of cozy fantasy, and especially if you are a fan of Sarah Beth Durst or Sangu Mandana. So next I'm going to start the third and final book of this video, which is Soulgazer by Maggie Rapier, but I don't know if I'm going to start this today, because today is actually Monday, December 22nd, so it's like 3 days before Christmas, and before I can possibly read, I have to go still wrap presents and also bake some more Christmas cookies, because today is my last day off from work before Christmas, so I have to get everything that I need to get done for Christmas done today. And also my husband and I are planning to exchange our gifts for each other tonight, so that's exciting. I think we might also end up watching a Christmas movie. Hi, so I'm here for reading update because I've made it to chapter 44, page 352. So I only have about 100 pages left, and so I wanted to give an update before I finish, because I haven't given any updates yet while reading this. So I've been enjoying this book very much. There have definitely been moments when I haven't wanted to put this down, and then when I do have to put it down, I just think about picking it back up again. And so far this book feels like a 4-star read. It just hasn't quite reached 5 stars on a whole, but there was a moment in the romance that felt like a 5-star moment, and that was on page 320. And that moment, it was just like a sweet moment between our main female character and the love interest, and just like made me giddy. And the romance and the love interest are definitely some of my favorite parts of this book. So our love interest is Phelan, and he is an infamous pirate known as the Wolf. And he's cheery and a charmer and has like that devil-may-care attitude. And I feel like his personality complements our main female character Saoirse's personality very well, because in contrast to him, she is more reserved, more quiet, more timid. So he kind of becomes her light in the dark, and even before she met him, she'd heard stories about him, about the wolf pirate, and she dreamed of him coming to whisk her away from her not-so-great life. And so Saoirse ends up marrying him as a way to escape a marriage that was arranged by her father to this horrible, cruel man. And essentially, this man just wants to marry her and use her as a tool to produce an heir. And so in the beginning, Saoirse and Phelan's marriage is very much one of convenience and very much a marriage in name only. as she marries him to get away from her father, but he marries her because he needs her to find this magical lost island. And finding this island will also benefit Saoirse because it will help her get rid of her cursed magic. And then speaking of magic, the magic and world building in this book is another part of the book I've really been enjoying. And it really feels unique in this book, and it like stands out from other books that I've read recently. So Saoirse's magic is that she sees visions of the future, and also when she has skin-to-skin contact with a person, she can feel their emotions. And she has always viewed her magic as a curse because of some things that happened because of it. And also her father also calls it a curse as well and treats her horribly because of it and essentially locks her away in a cottage for 7 years. And then another part of her magic is that she can also feel the feelings of the dead without even like touching them. If they're just like around her, she can feel like all their feelings. And in this world, the gods were killed by humans because the humans wanted their magic. And so as a result of that, now when you die, you can't pass on. Your soul is trapped in the realm of the living. And so since humans kill the gods, they can now like harvest magic from certain like animals and plants and other like organic matter like rocks. And the love interest, Phelan, and his pirate crew go around gathering and harvesting these magical items. And they use them to accomplish legendary feats. And speaking of Phelan and his pirate crew, there is very much a strong sense of found family among them, and I just love that because I love the found family trope. And so I'm gonna go finish this now, and I'll be back with my final thoughts. So heartwarming. It says, and for the first time in my life, I truly feel like I belong somewhere. Like, oh. Hi, so it's the next day, and I did finish Soulgazer yesterday, but I needed like the rest of the day to process my thoughts. So I am here with my final thoughts now. And I decided I'm giving this 5 stars. And my main reason for that is I absolutely loved the main character and the love interest in this book. The character arc that Saoirse went through in this book was just so powerful and inspiring and beautiful. So at the beginning of the book, she starts off timid and lacking confidence and self-worth. But as the story goes on and through her interactions with Phelan and his pirate crew, she begins to gain confidence and self-worth and starts to learn to stand up for herself. And it's just so beautiful to see that journey. And I also really appreciated how she is very much a soft character, and by the end of the book, she still like maintains that soft side to her. And I feel like a lot of fantasy romances these days have main female characters that are very tough and revenge driven, and they end up like being like really good with like weapons or some type of magic and don't really have much softness to them. And so it's just really refreshing to get a character like Saoirse. And I feel like I relate more to the soft female characters on a whole rather than the tougher female characters, which, don't get me wrong, I have a lot of fun with books that have main female characters that are tough, because just reading about those types of characters is a lot of fun, and it's always really cool to just see them being awesome, and it's such like an adrenaline rush. But at the same time, I relate more to softer characters like Saoirse. And at the end of this book, in a section titled Behind the Book, the author talks about how Saoirse is a soft character and how at the end of the story she still maintains that softness. And she says she's not a natural fighter and she doesn't want to burn the world down, at least not yet. She is written for the soft girls, the ones who were told they were damaged goods. Anger does not drive her narrative, but loss, grief. And so like the whole point of Saoirse's story is healing. And she does that through her interactions with Phelan and his crew. And that was another favorite part of the story, was her romance with Phelan. Seeing their ups and downs, their misunderstandings, their happy moments, and just seeing them get to understand each other better, and also helping each other understand their own selves better as well. And this is the first book in a duology, and the second book is called Wolf Tamer, and it's coming out next August 25th, 2026. And the cover on this one looks absolutely gorgeous, and actually the thing that first drew me to Soulgazer was its cover. And since this is the first book in a duology, there are some loose threads at the end of it but the overall main plot of the first book is resolved. And I thought the plot of this book was very well done and very interesting, and also unique and different from other fantasy romance books that I've read recently. And overall, I thought this book had a good balance of plot, character moments, and romance. And I also think those things, along with the writing style, also made this book feel different from like a lot of other fantasy romance books that I read recently, and just felt like a breath of fresh air. So if you are looking for a fantasy romance book that's a little different from all the other fantasy romance books out there, I would definitely recommend checking out Soulgazer. So we reached the end of the video, and I am really excited that all 3 of these books ended up being 5 stars like I had predicted. And so let's just do a quick little wrap up before I let you go. The first one I read was Warrior Princess Assassin by Brigid, Kemmerer, and this is the first book in a trilogy. This one I would recommend if you're looking for a fast-paced fantasy romance, and also if you like character-driven stories, because this one's very character-focused. And this one does have some pretty spicy scenes towards the end of the book as well. And the second book I read was Violet Thistlewaite Is Not a Villain Anymore. This one is more on the cozy fantasy side, and I think you'll love this if you are a fan of Sarah Beth Durst or Sangu Mandana. And this one just has a tiny bit of spice. And then the third and final book I read was Soulgazer, which I just talked about. And this one I would recommend if you like your fantasy romances well balanced with plot, romance, and character development, and also if you're looking for something that feels a little different from all the other fantasy romance books out there. And so with that, I'm gonna let you go. Let me know down below if you read any of these, what you thought of them, or let me know what your last 5-star read was. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, bye!